There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're going to be recording episode 621 here in just a few seconds. Joining me tonight is going to be Robyn Sandoval, Rob Morse from the staff, and the interview subject is going to be Holly Sullivan once we get started here. Holly, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cover you for right now. I'm going to cover you with a logo, and we'll when we come back into your interview, it will disappear. So as soon as I figure out where it is, there we go. All right. I believe on my end we are ready to fly. Robyn, you guys ready to go? All right. Susan, are we ready to go on your side? I think I heard yes from the other room, but her microphone is not turned on, so I didn't hear it in my headsets. All right.
That will be a problem.
All right. I think we're just going to go ahead and, as soon as I can find the right buttons here, hit that one to turn the timer off. And we are going to hear from Masada Ayub and start recording in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masada Ayub from the Firearms podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
And I should have show notes up already. I don't. There we go. Welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, April the 18th, 2022. One of the best days of the year, April 18th. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'll learn why here in a minute. I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show, we talk with Holly Sullivan about her great work to keep a wave of anti-gun legislation from becoming law in Connecticut.
I'm Robyn Sandoval, and we'll talk about another attempted mass killing in a gun-free zone. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on. Episode 621 of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast starts right now. If it's Monday and it's 6 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, it must be time for Polite Society Podcast. Welcome back, everybody. Rob, what's been up with you since the last time we've been on the air together, man?
It's been a quiet week down here in Southwest Louisiana. I released another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories. Tony Simon was my guest host this time. I carried every day. It's a normal week. How about you? Oh, Robyn, you've been a crazy woman, I know.
Yes, things are really busy here in a Girl in a Gun world. We're preparing for our national conference, which takes place next week. So as of Thursday, I'll be kind of off the grid as I go to host about 700 people into to the range at Grand Junction, Colorado. So I'm looking forward to training and hanging out with all those great women. What about you, Paul? What have you been up to?
Well, I alluded as we opened the show, April 18th is one of the very best days of the year. I personally think it rates right up there with Christmas, if not even maybe a little bit above Christmas.
I get it.
Susan, if you're on mic, you want to let us know why April 18th is such a special day? And her mic is still turned off. Check your mic on your actual headset, sweetheart, because your microphone is still not coming through. And I can hear her talking in the other room, but it's still not coming through. So I'm just going to go ahead and say today is my sweetheart Susan's birthday. And there's something that Charlie Cook and I did that I traditionally, I really, really suck at giving gifts. And so this year I thought, rather than trying to search and hunt and try to find something, I would get together with Charlie. And when Susan and I very first met, I was they called them DJs back then. Now they're radio personalities. And I would go into work, and I'd rather than have people call in to get a request, I would call Susan and say, "What do you want me to play?" And quite often it would be Andrew Gold's "Thank You for Being a Friend." This is before it became a big thing for the Golden Girls as their theme song. And so this year I asked Charlie to do that song as a gungram. And he actually was able to get that done and released it yesterday. And I thought it was really, really cool. Susan, have you got the microphone thing worked out yet? I still don't hear her. I can hear her talking in the other room, which is really amazing because I have really horrible hearing. But, yeah, well, maybe you even heard that because that came in loud. Anyway, let's do this. We've got to go to break. We're going to get into the interview segment, and I'm going to run out of the room real quick, see if I can get her microphone working. So hang on, everybody. We're going to hear from ACLDN, and we will be back with the interview segment with Holly Sullivan right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right, we are back, and I need to make one little change right here. And we're going to bring our guest in, Holly Sullivan from the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. Holly, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
As we alluded to, there was a mess of gun control restrictions that were on the way down in Connecticut this year, and you and the folks at CCDL have done truly remarkable work in narrowing what was supposed to happen down to, from what I understand, was over 50 pages down to, or excuse me, over 100 pages down significantly. Tell us about that. I think it was SB 50. I forget what it was.
Yeah, so it was Senate Bill 16.
16.
This was, yep, and we reference it as the governor's bill. So a little over a month ago, Governor Lamont held a press conference, which was not planned. I'm sure they planned it, but we were not aware that it was coming. I got the alert on social media that the governor had gone live, which is something that I always watch for. And they had a huge press conference, and it included Senator Blumenthal. It included survivors of incidents in our state. It included Commissioner Ravella, who is the head of the state police here in Connecticut, and essentially announced that they were rolling out the biggest gun control package that the state has ever seen. In my opinion, this bill was far bigger in scope than what was proposed following Sandy Hook. So of course, we have had our hands absolutely full. And as you said, we went from 53 pages of text and we are down to 3 pages of text. And it passed joint favorable out of the Judiciary Committee. So next it heads to the legislature for the floor votes in both the House and the Senate. So it is not yet law, and there have been a lot of tremendously good changes, which is absolutely due to the work of CCDL and its members.
Holly, we've seen Connecticut politicians say the nation should be like Connecticut. Do what we do, only more. And each time they sort of promise this gun control utopia that's just one more infringement on honest gun owners. Is it the media? Is it that hasn't brought peace and utopia? There's still violence in Hartford. There's still, violence in New Haven, Bridgeport. Why are they never held to account? Or is it like, is it almost like a religion? You get to go hear all these promises from a governor's speech on Sunday, and it never makes it to Monday morning when there are more murders on the street.
Yeah, so there's a couple things happening. So Connecticut was relatively friendly prior to Sandy Hook. So, of course, that tragedy changed everything for all of us. We went from a state that we were the Constitution state, and gun owners had pretty decent rights here in the state of Connecticut. And although CCDL was already in its adolescence, I would say, it was a new organization prior to Sandy Hook happening. When that happened, I think it really opened up their eyes that they had the ability to pass whatever they wanted based on emotion, because the legislators on both sides of the aisle went with the bill, even though to this date it has still not been fulfilled in the way that it was supposed to be done. There are a lot of problems with that legislation that is incomplete. SB 1160, which was the bill that came post Sandy Hook, had 3 components. The first component was gun control. The second component was school security. And the third component is mental health funding. The state of Connecticut is yet to put any funding into the mental health initiative that they announced after Sandy Hook and his law. They have not done that. And not all of the schools in Connecticut are up to code yet with their school security plans. So here we are, we're approaching the 10-year anniversary of Sandy Hook, and the only thing that's truly been done is gun control. So this was the bill that was supposed to make it so that this never happens again. They have failed on 2/3 of it, but they did see how easy it was to get it done with that big of a tragedy, and a tragedy that sadly they use the names of these children to pass these laws through. So I think what's interesting is that here in Connecticut, in such a fast period of time, it's been somewhat of a litmus test for what they can do at a federal level. And I think it's really important that you listen to the words that federal legislators like Senator Blumenthal are using in these press conferences, where they're promising to replicate some of these bills. And what President Biden has announced, the ghost gun bill, it is something that we fought long and hard in 2019. It is law here in Connecticut. And if you want to know what's coming, just look at us, because this is a very small state, and a state that has complete Democratic control. They have an absolute trifecta here in Hartford. They have the House, the Senate, and the governorship, and they can do as they please. However, Senate Bill 16 was an eye-opener, I think, for a lot of people. And I'm happy to talk more about what was in that bill and what's not there anymore. But I think that's really the foundation of what we're looking at here, and why it's so important that the rest of the country is watching.
It sounds like you're holding the politicians accountable, but the media aren't. Or to phrase that, maybe to put a finer point on that, if the media say anything critical of these broken promises, it's because you point them out to the media.
Yeah, so that's usually where I go. I was on vacation with my daughter a couple days ago. I got a call from a local paper, and it's like, sorry, kiddo, we got to go back to the hotel room because I've got to make sure I make it on the 6 o'clock news, because we have to get our point across. If it doesn't come from CCDL, the rest of the state isn't hearing it. CCDL truly is the voice of gun owners in the state of Connecticut. There really is no other organization like us, and that's not to be boastful, but we have just surpassed 43,000 members in a state that you can drive through in an hour and a half. So to put that in perspective, it's people. 40,000 Connecticut gun owners got their permit for the first time last year. 1,000 people got their permit for the first time in a tiny state. Crime is through the roof here. Crime is out of control. People are being carjacked. People do not feel safe in this state. We have a huge problem in our judicial branch as far as holding criminals accountable. And again, it's just a sort of a micro environment of what is coming at a federal level. And just, there's no doubt people do not feel safe, and the legislation just keeps coming because their only answer to the crimes is to pass more laws, but not go after
Holly,
people that are doing it.
I'm gonna hog you. You guys should speak up and stop me. Holly, is this a test case for gun control, or is this a test case to see if the political excuses that are being thrown at the voters in Connecticut are actually being accepted? Is this a crime and justice question, or is this a political marketing question?
It's probably a little bit of both, right? I think they're getting certainly a taste of how much narrative they can control. I think, in my opinion, it is tough for us to get our message across. And when I do an interview, the interview might be 10 or 15 minutes, but 20 seconds makes it into the segment. So it's learning how to phrase your sentences so that they can be edited as little as possible, and you can get as much in there as you need to.
Wow.
But I'm happy to, in this segment or the next, kind of talk a little bit about what was in Senate Bill 16 compared to what it is right now. But we can do that in a bit if you'd rather.
I'd like to know, too, not only what was in it and what you got removed, but how have the influx of new gun owners in Connecticut helped your cause or helped get your message out? Does having numbers on your side make a real big difference when you're talking to those politicians?
It has made all the difference. And I think one of the things that you can't ignore, not only just here in the state of Connecticut, but across the country, is that the demographic of gun owners is changing. By and large, we have known for years that women are astronomically growing. It's also in our Hispanic communities and our African American communities and Black communities. When it came to the fight against SB 16, one of the initiatives that CCDL has really been working on is doing a better job of getting into our urban communities. One of the folks that I'm really, really proud of is Peter Estrada. He is the CCDL Urban Engagement Coordinator, and his role is really just to make sure that we're having dialogues in the right places, and that they're offered not only in English but in Spanish, and that he is a Hispanic instructor. He is able to speak to people and make sure that they kind of understand that when the politicians make these promises, this is what they're really saying. And when it came to public testimony, we were just shy of 2,000 testimonies towards that bill. More than 90% was against it, and a tremendous number of the people who participated were from traditionally minority communities. And I think those voices really kind of rattled the legislators to say, wait a second, this is not who we thought gun owners are in the state of Connecticut. It's not who gun owners are in America, let's be honest with you, because it's a right for all, and it's a right that we need to defend for all, and it's a right that we need to defend for those who are still coming, who haven't been born yet or haven't immigrated here or whatever the case may be. It's our birthright as Americans. So I think that was tremendous, and that's been a massive change in our organization in the last 3 years since this board came in, and I'm really, really proud of the work that's being done in our outreach to urban areas.
If I could, Holly, I want to expand on that a little. You said that the numbers of concealed carry permits in Connecticut are growing, and I looked up on handgunlaw.us just as you were saying that Connecticut is may issue, and for for concealed carry permits to continue growing in May issue country is simply amazing.
Yeah.
That is that's to me, that says that not only are you folks doing great work, but the people in general know that there are such dire circumstances in Connecticut. They need to defend themselves. They need to arm themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And the May issue thing, it is a huge problem. So state statute in Connecticut says that they have 8 weeks to issue your permit from the time that an applicant goes in. We have a very unusual processing system here in Connecticut. You don't go to the state police, or we don't actually even have sheriffs. We're the only state in the United States that doesn't have elected law enforcement, that's not in a sanctuary state. So the only states that don't have elected law enforcement are us and Alaska. However, Alaska is a Second Amendment sanctuary, so they their officers are somewhat bound to respecting the Second Amendment. So Connecticut is the only state in the country where it's kind of an odd relationship with our law enforcement. We support our blue, but yet at the end of the day, it's very much a police state. So the way that you get your permit here in Connecticut is first you have to get a local permit. You go to your local police department and you apply there. After 8 weeks, they are expected to issue you your temporary permit. You cannot purchase a handgun or ammunition with this temporary permit. It only allows you to carry in your town, but you can't buy one, so it does you very little good. And at that point in time, you then go to the state police, make an appointment, and then you will get a 5-year permit that allows you to carry in the state of Connecticut outside of your town, and you can purchase, and also purchase ammunition. You can't purchase ammunition on a temp permit. So it is tremendous that many people went through the process and fought for it. And then if you get denied and you have to go to the Board of Firearms Permit Examiners, it is a more than year wait just to be heard. So we have a lot of problems. So we are actually, CCDL filed a lawsuit against the 4 biggest cities in the state of Connecticut. We filed a lawsuit against their chiefs of police. We are currently suing the chief of police of Waterbury, Hartford, Bridgeport, and New Haven for delays. And it is not lost on us that those are our urban communities, and it is a socioeconomic disadvantaged area that those people are waiting more than a year longer than people that are in predominantly white areas to exercise a constitutionally protected right.
Wow.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Sorry.
Yeah, we've got a lot going on.
Robyn?
Well, I'm just wondering if you brought those to their attention, how someone would respond to the blatant discrimination. I mean, I would think that many of the elected officials would want to hear that and want to respond to that, at least publicly, to look like they were that they were caring about these communities. Because when you talk about blatant discrimination, that's supposed to be frowned upon these days. Does everyone just push it under the rug?
Yes. Yeah, nobody gives us a good answer for it, and no politician on the other side of the argument has come forth and said that it's unacceptable or anything like that. And this lawsuit is very public. We put out press releases. It was on all the major news stations. Nobody from the majority party, who tends to be the folks, and I'm not going to say that everybody on the right supports gun rights, because not everybody does, but the overwhelming party that is in control in those cities, none of them have come forward and said that this is egregious and that they're going to do something about it. When some of our folks give testimony, they'll certainly give comments saying, man, that's terrible that happened, but nobody has come forward and actually done anything aside from CCDL. CCDL, is the one that wrote the check and paid the attorneys and said, go for it. So we're quite a ways into this lawsuit, and we're keeping at it because they have to be held accountable. It is not acceptable that in my zip code, I'm able to exercise this constitutional right and my colleagues in another zip code cannot. And it's pretty obvious that I look a little bit different than they might, and that is wrong.
Holly, we're right up against a break. Can I have you hang out for one more segment with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, folks, hang on. We're going to hear from the good folks at CNJFO. We'll be right back right after this.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
And welcome back to the second interview segment. We still have Holly Sullivan of CCDL with us. Holly, what I want to get into next, if I could, that you went from 50 pages down to 3. What is left in SB 18?
Yeah, so I'm going to actually have to read this to you because 53 pages, I'm not going to read you all 53 pages, I promise, but I will give you the highlights of what was in the governor's bill. So we were about to get a 2022 assault weapon ban, which would ban any firearms without serial numbers, which would obviously be anything that you would, mill as a homemade firearm. We already do have a ghost gun ban, but they wanted to do it again. It would also eliminate others for anybody who isn't familiar after well, I would say that a lot of the rifles that they're not even rifle, it's not a rifle, it's not a handgun, it is on a similar platform to, or it's on an AR platform, but a lot of folks might not be familiar with others, but that's what we're able to purchase since SB 1160. So it would ban those others altogether, which is a tremendous amount of business that our FFLs are doing in the state of Connecticut these days. We would be required to obtain a certificate of possession. It expanded the list of banned firearms, so it would ban 22 rimfire rifles with detachable magazines and one feature. So, for example, 1522 would now be banned in the state of Connecticut. It's ridiculous. A rimfire 22s would be no more. It would ban the others. It would ban pistol braces, stabilizing braces. It would ban the sale of receivers and lowers. It also would ban anything that was considered a pre-ban. So right now in Connecticut, if it's pre-94, we can still purchase it. They're actually going to go prior to 94 and ban all firearms that have those evil features, that has any of the evil features that were pre-94. It would ban all transfers and sales of 2022 assault weapons within the state, so you can't exchange them amongst each other. It would modify our carry laws. It would allow what we call show your papers. So we would be asked on demand if asked by police, even if they do not have reasonable suspicion of a crime. So very much like stop and frisk, if somebody was just out walking around and an officer said, are you carrying? Show me your permit, without reasonable suspicion of a crime. Right now, they can certainly ask you if they think something's going on, but they have to have a justifiable reason to do so. So that would go away. It would add family members it adds family to the violence or misdemeanor disqualifiers for your permit, and the list of who is considered family is pretty extensive. So it's not just spouses, but also former spouses, parents, children, related by blood or marriage, presently residing together or have resided together, persons who have a child in common, persons in or have recently been in a dating relationship with. So if anybody makes an accusation, a red flag accusation, we were the very first state to have red flag laws. We've had them since 1990s. If somebody you have a child in common with or have recently dated makes an accusation against you, you could lose your permit. It removes the right to, and then it removes the right to appeal to the boards of firearm permit examiners. So you can't even get on that 1 year list to go and get your permit back. it would make a gun-free zone within 75 feet of any polling place. Well, what does that do to our handicapped population? They can't vote and carry. They can't even park their car in the handicapped spots at their polling locations. What does that do to folks who take public transportation, right? You can't leave your gun anywhere. So it would make all municipal buildings in the state a gun-free zone, including towns. So for me, I serve on the Board of Selectmen in my town. I'm an elected official in town. My town hall would immediately become a gun-free zone. It would make gun-free zones, it would make it a gun-free zone on any bus, train, or ferry operated by a government entity. For anybody who knows, Connecticut is positioned on the Long Island Sound. So any bus, train, or ferry, so all public transportation is now a gun-free zone. What does that further do to our minority communities in the urban areas that rely on public transportation? No more firearms. No firearms can be shown, displayed, or visible within 250 feet of any demonstration. So what is a demonstration? 15 or more people situated in public, in an immediate area, even in a parking lot of any store, shop, restaurant, tavern, shopping center, or other place of business. Any public gathering.
Holly,
yeah.
Holly, that's the outdoor seating at a cafe.
Yes.
And there's a gun store how many feet away? 200 yards? 600 feet?
75 feet. You can't be within 75. You can't be within.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. No, I apologize. I'm gonna go backwards. I'm sorry. It was 250 feet of a demonstration. So our group, CCDL, 43,000 members, we're gonna have more than 15 people gathered if we so much as put out anything.
Right. Right.
It shuts us down, and it's shutting down. It would also look to shut down other groups that exercise their rights in other ways, if they're lawfully armed. So I'm sorry. So yeah, 250 feet. If 15 people are assembled, that is considered a demonstration. So yeah, and it's even on any place of business. So we're talking about private property. We're not even talking about state-owned property. Including any public building, its grounds or surrounding area, or any public parking lot, street right-of-way, sidewalk, public park, or public grounds.
So they just basically said the Connecticut Citizens Defense League can't carry at their own state convention, even if it's on private property. That's oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. And it's not even. Yeah, and it's even smaller groups as that. There's a lot of groups in our urban areas that will have, peaceful marches if they disagree with something that's going on, and a lot of those folks are armed for their own safety and protection. It's shutting down anybody who chooses to assemble and exercise their First Amendment right by eliminating their Second Amendment right. And it's in text.
It could, if I had 20, if Robyn has 20 people at a girl in a gun class, is that considered a demonstration?
If they deem that curricula or whatever they're talking about to demonstrate, then
oh my gosh,
it's all fair game here.
And I'm not familiar with Connecticut gun stores. Brooke Cheney made a comment. If it had passed, I know there were gun shops that would have shut down. I don't know about Connecticut gun stores, but here in South Dakota, it is not all that uncommon to have a lot more than 15 people in the gun store at one time.
Yeah, so the gun store themselves would still be able to do business. They're talking about 15 people gathering, but that could certainly be the parking lot, right? So if, gun store is in a strip mall and the folks want to, get a cup of coffee and mill around outside and hang out around and have some Dunkin' Donuts, which is pretty common here in New England, that it could now be considered a demonstration. You can't have a firearm on you. So it's a pretty huge leap that they took. But it doesn't stop there. It gets worse. So we've got getting rid of our guns, getting rid of even so much as 22 rimfire rifles, stop and frisk, First Amendment rights. Then they wanted to create a state license for gun dealers. They would have a new state license. So mind you, this is beyond what ATF already requires of our FFL. So they would have a new state license. It would have some fees with it. The owner of the store has to have a valid state permit to carry. They have to get a local permit. They have to be an FFL, which is not a problem. They all already are. And then any other materials required by the commissioner that was going to go into law. Any other materials. So they could say you need to have 4-foot thick cement walls in order to be an FFL in our state. There was no end to what the commissioner was given authority to put on our FFLs. They could say whatever they want. They could say they need to have a safe as tight as Fort Knox. Any other requirements.
Wow.
What does that mean for FFLs? But it gets worse. Fines of 25. It gets worse.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. Fines of $25,000 per violation. Per violation. So they make a mistake, 25 grand. They do it. You know what I mean? Maybe they find 6 violations in one visit. $25,000 per violation. And here's the big one. Licenses cannot be transferred. So mom and pop gun store, FFL, that's been in business for 30 years, they want to pass the business on to their son, their daughter, or sell it and move to a free state like most people do from Connecticut. It's not transferable. So you're lucky if you get it now, but there's no guarantee that your business won't just close its doors and everything you've worked for your entire life is gone. And we had to fight for our FFLs. Because that is egregious, and no other industry would be held to that standard that the state can just shut you down and say you cannot pass your license on.
Holly, before it gets worse, let me ask another question. If I heard this and I was a pro-rights politician, I'd look at all the anti-rights politicians on the panel in the assembly and say, aren't you admitting that all the gun control you passed didn't work? You've passed hundreds of laws, 23,000 if you count all of them, and yet you say we still need more and we have rampant crime. Aren't you admitting this doesn't work? And aren't these infringements discriminatory and racist? That seems obvious to me. Was it obvious to any pro-rights politicians that were assembled there?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple. Craig Fishbein is one of our House representatives, and he is the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, and he as well as Doug Dubitsky and some of the others that are on that committee. There are quite a number of them who were just absolutely had our backs in this and listened. And at the end of the day, and I'm happy to report where we are today versus where we were 6 weeks ago, it is a very different bill. This bill passed joint favorable out of committee, which means they finally got their heads together and they did a phenomenal job and talked a lot about what was reasonable and what was not reasonable. And where we are today is what came out of that bill is what really should have been the governor's focus in the first place. So right after Sandy Hook, ironically, a year after Sandy Hook, we actually used to have a firearms trafficking task force. It's a group of police officers. I think it was 16 officers. And their role was just to go after guns that are illegally trafficked in our state. And I think we can all get behind that, right? Bad guys shouldn't have guns. If you're making straw purchases, everybody can agree with that. They actually defunded the task force shortly after Sandy Hook. So we've been without these officers. There's one officer for the whole state that is tasked with tracing illegal firearms.
That's a job.
So the common ground that was reached is that they're actually going to fund that task force again. And that is something that CCDL has actually advocated for many years. Every single year that bill has been brought forward in both the House and the Senate, predominantly by Senator Rob Sampson. He brings that bill every single year to fund the firearms trafficking task force and get those officers back out doing the job of finding illegal firearms in our state, which is where we need to be focused. So the things that are now on those 3 pieces of paper is funding the firearms trafficking task force and doing a study on the feasibility of a state license for our FFLs. However, the caveat is that NSSF would have to be involved, or an organization like NSSF would have to have a seat at the table and make sure that the FFLs are heard. And that is no small feat in a state where there is a complete anti-gun trifecta in House, Senate, and governorship. And the legislators that we have worked very hard over 13 years to have these relationships with, they put in a lot of sweat equity on this bill to go from 53 pages to 3 pages of something that's really palatable. I'd rather our FFLs not have any license at all. But right now it's just a study. And even at that, the NSSF or similar sporting organization has to be involved in that study. It cannot be one-sided.
What do you because we've had just oodles. I will not be able to get all the comments in. We've had oodles and oodles and oodles of comments come in. Brooke says even the BLM came out against this bill for not being able to carry in public. And when BLM comes out against it, boy, if BLM is on our side, there's a word of warning for you. And then I want to Smeggy. I feel you, Smeggy. He says, "Good thing I only know like 3 people, so we can get together whenever." And then one more here. Brooke says, Mr. Morse, it's Connecticut. It always gets worse here in Connecticut. And no, they, the antis, say what they have done in the past has worked, and that's why we need more. It's the crime is rising. That's why what you've done has worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, okay.
Right.
Preach it, Holly.
No, what I was going to say is sort of the narrative right now, and this is something that y'all should have on your radars when they're talking about the ghost gun legislation at a federal level. They really are blaming it on every other state's lax laws, that the reason why there's guns in this state is because they're just bringing them in from out of state, that it's not because of us, which doesn't make any sense. Then why are you going to ban 1522s in the state of Connecticut? It's ridiculous. But that's really where you're coming from, and that is really the foundation of Biden's announcement, is that, you know, the narrative that they're using here in a state like Connecticut is, you know, we banned the ghost guns several years ago, but they're still showing up in crimes because the other states haven't. So they're using this as the narrative to build the federal dialogue off of.
It's the Chicago excuse. They've used it for a decade now. Yeah,
well, longer than that, but yes.
Just other people come here to commit crime that they don't have. Holly, talk to me about this discussion in committee that changed this proposal. Was it a reasoned discussion, or was it a little bit more of, you know, a pro-rights legislator saying, go for it? Because when you do, I'm going to call you out so bad your phones are going to melt. How does that work?
So they break for that part. So the majority of what is heard in Judiciary Committee, or a good part of it, is streamed, and the public is welcome to watch what is streamed. However, once they go into caucus, that is not public. So I would not want to speculate what those dialogues were, but there were some long breaks over the course of the day of that vote. So what I will say is the most heartfelt thing that I can say to anybody listening is don't forget about the legislators that work for you. You know, it's very easy to get up in arms about those who are against us, but you got to channel that energy for the good ones and put it towards helping their campaign so they come back. The particular legislator who is our ranking member, who is very much on our side, and much like Robyn, at one point in time, he was very much on the other side of the gun control argument, just didn't know what he didn't know. And as he's kind of gone through his constitutional journey, this is Craig Fishbein. He is now an NRA instructor, and he gets about 200 people a week through his permit class. And not only is he an attorney, he used to run the Board of Firearms permit examiners in the state. He is an incredible House representative. He's an attorney on several of our cases. He, along with Doug Dubitsky, sued the governor over fingerprinting delays during COVID. A federal judge who was appointed by President Obama actually ruled with us that the governor had to lift the executive order and resume fingerprinting. This man does so much, and his last election, we actually thought he lost. He wound up winning by 16 votes. We can't lose him. If we lose somebody like that, if we had lost him, we would have Senate Bill 16 today. There is no doubt. He is the ranking member in this committee, and he is very important. So you guys, we have to remember that we put all of this energy into the, who we don't like. You got to channel that energy into the people that you do like and make sure that they come back next term.
Yeah, Bloomberg hates Fishbein, so, show your love.
Yeah, absolutely. And it means not just voting. It's not enough in a state like Connecticut or New York or California to just go and vote. You have to be part of the solution. You need to give up 2 weekends in the fall, make some time, knock doors, hand out flyers, talk to your friends, and bring a car full of people on voting day. It is not enough for you by yourself to just show up and think that you're going to move the goalpost by yourself. You have to actually be part of the solution if you're going to really, we talk all the time. Everybody says over, from my cold dead hands and over my dead body and but when push comes to shove, put your effort into it, because if you don't, they will win. It doesn't take that much to help out and make sure that people get reelected. It really is not. It's a day of leaf raking that you could give up and walk around in the fall and get out there. We have a lot of leaves here in Connecticut, leaves and snow.
Amen.
But that 4 or 6 hour block of time, find somewhere else to do it and help the legislators. Donate to their campaigns, $5, $10 donations. It all adds up because they really do work for us. And we can't forget them, because I will tell you, Senate Bill 16 would be reality right now without somebody who we almost lost last election. That we cannot have that again.
Holly, we're actually over on time, but I want to get just a couple real quick comments in that came in here, and get this in here fast. Smeggy says, so they agree that illegal traffic guns are the problem, but they defund the people who catch traffic guns? What's wrong with them?
Yeah.
That's politics.
Politics.
And then Brooke, I believe that is the website for the legislator. That's over on the Facebook side. So YouTube people, if you're looking to help out, over to the Facebook side, and I can't make that linkable in the video, but if you go to the Facebook side, that's in the comments. So, Holly, we're plumb out of time for this segment. I do want to thank you so much for joining us and bringing us up to speed on what's going on in Connecticut, and thank you for your work on keeping the anti-gun legislation at bay in Connecticut.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to share what's going on here, because, again, this is the litmus test for what they can get done anywhere else.
All right. Folks, do stay tuned. We've got a news segment to come up, and I'm hoping I'm going to go check on Susan's microphone here in a second. I hope I get it fixed. Anyway, hang on, everybody. We will be right back right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
Well, if the software automatically threw it to a 4-shot, that means the ad is over, and I've got to come back here and I've got to say, hi, welcome back to the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. This is our news segment. Susan, did we get it fixed? We did not. I can hear her talking in the background, and there is something preventing her audio from getting here, and I don't know what that is, and I do apologize. This is frustrating. This is very...
Paul,
yeah.
could one of us read the news while you work the problem?
You know what? Let's go ahead and do that, and I will be right back.
Okay, Robyn, are we going to go Rochambeau to fix this, or what?
Yeah, let's talk about the news.
Okay, I'll go first. following the shootings, the ones in Sacramento, the ones in Los Angeles, not to be outdone, New York took the next turn. On Tuesday, a man opened fire on a loaded subway car full of people. It was rush hour. Unbelievably, no one was killed in that particular shooting. Although 10 were injured, the guy threw 2 smoke grenades into the car. I think there were 20 people that had respiratory difficulty and had to be treated. So really, it's just more of what we've been seeing in various public transportations, all of them gun-free zones, all across the blue states. Several riders were pushed onto the tracks. There have been multiple shootings and stabbings, particularly on stairways in the subway late at night. While uniformed patrol officers might cut down on incidents, even after the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin decision, which should be coming down in a month or so, that might bring more concealed carriers into these restrictive states where it's impossible to get a permit. Anti-gun politicians might pass laws where firearms are still banned in public transportation. We were told that if we were disarmed, then the bad guys were disarmed and the cops would save us. There were no police present, even though this was rush hour. Now, with BLM, such a force, even putting law enforcement down in the subways may end up being a political hot potato. Robyn, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I think it's a mess, and it's really unfortunate for the people of New York who are being told to rely on law enforcement who obviously are not there when law enforcement is needed because they keep defunding and they keep pulling them out of places for optics. So one of the things I think was really worth reading was Lauren Hartnett, who's our DC Project delegate from New York.
Right.
She wrote a little op-ed about it, and if you guys haven't had the chance to read it, go over to dcproject.info. But one thing she says in here is how it was 30 hours. It took 30 hours for the alleged shooter to run through 2 New York City boroughs, dodging police while citizens went about their day for 30 hours. So people were still in danger. Nobody knew who it was. Despite the technology, the cameras, and the largest police force in the country, nobody knew who he was for 30 hours. So Lauren says
he turned himself in.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And pending the Bruin case, lawmakers in New York have already started preparing by writing legislation that will prohibit firearms in places throughout the state that are densely populated. Mass transit and public transportation are targeted in these prohibitions. And she says 2 years ago, protesters demanded that New York police made a less presence in the subways. So they actively pulled police out of the subways. And in March 2022, the NYPD reported that there was an overall index crime increase of 36.5%. So 36% increase of crime in transit, where transit is up more than 73% as people have been moving back into the city. So as Lauren points out, penalties for criminals continue to decrease. Crime, violence, and risk to our lives continue to increase, and no one will get there fast enough. This attack has shown us once again that restrictive gun laws do not protect the innocent. They do not save lives. They leave us vulnerable, unprotected, and at the mercy of a madman. So that's from Lauren Hartnett of.
We were told that we should use public transport to save the planet. The only problem is public transport can get you killed. In a number of deep blue cities, but I'm thinking of both coasts, San Francisco with BART, DC with their metro, when so many people stopped using public transportation, it was taken over by the homeless and by criminals. And now, I think I read a number where they were looking at 84,000 more commuters than they had before COVID because people you do not want to be the first guy that starts using public transportation. That's a gauntlet you don't want to run.
Well, and this is not gun related. However, they went to, in San Francisco, another issue is they went to an on your honor system for paying. And yeah, that's to nobody's shock except for the people that suggested it, that's not working so well. And the criminal element decided, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to get on wherever we want to get on, get off wherever we want to get off, and do whatever we want to while we're on there.
Right. Do we have Susan with us?
Susan, are you here?
Let's find out.
Yay!
Ah! Am I? Yay!
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm telling you, it was the operator. Had to be something I was doing. I don't know. Kind of crazy. Anyhow, the Heller Foundation announced a settlement with the city of Washington, D.C. in a Second Amendment challenge to their infringement of the citizens' firearms freedom civil rights. The settlement included a financial award to the foundation and retraction of the district's unlawful restrictions. The case was filed when Dick Heller and others were told they could not own or build any partial firearm kit. The regulation also made all police firearms illegal and individual possession of Glocks illegal.
Okay, who wants to go first?
I would not, with Dick Heller's record suing DC, I would not want to be the person who is whose job is getting or filing responses to these lawsuits, because you just know that once that one comes through, oh my goodness, this is going to hurt again. He's got a fantastic record.
We'll fix it for you.
He does have a fantastic record suing DC, and I hope it continues. I do not personally know whether SAF is involved in this. I would not doubt that there is some involvement. I don't think I don't think it goes through us primarily, but I would not doubt that there's some SAF involvement there. So yeah, that's a. I just and
If you,
go
it's
ahead.
kind of funny because Dick calls it right out in his press release, because he says that even though in a free country paid for with the blood of patriots, citizens may construct a boat, airplane, or bow and arrow, or a firearm, but the residents of DC may not purchase their own firearms, may not construct their own firearms in their home or for any other lawful purpose. So it's just once again how the people of DC are relegated to second-class citizens, and their local government puts them in that position all the time.
Yeah. Robyn, do you shoot handgun competition on a regular basis, or would you call it sporadic? Regular?
No, regular. Mm-hmm.
Okay. When I was doing it, and I used both the 1911 and a Glock, the 1911 tended to be harder on parts. And, okay, if you're shooting a couple competitions a month and practicing in between, you're looking at close to 1,000 rounds a month. And I am trying to think, other than the serialized frame, I've been in and out of that gun. I've replaced every possible part, had it worked on, have duplicates for it. I probably have several firearms if I just assembled the loose parts. And that was completely legal and innocent. Criminalizing that doesn't make us safer.
It doesn't make any sense either. It obviously doesn't have any context in the everyday American citizen's life. The responsibly armed citizen. Those parts do nothing to bolster crime.
But it did make good press releases.
That it did.
I really want, of everything that's in the show notes for stories, I really want to get to this next one, because there's a great point to it. Susan.
A U.S. judge last Tuesday questioned whether allowing Mexico to sue U.S. gun manufacturers for facilitating the trafficking of weapons to drug cartels would open the door to other countries suing them. In particular, Russia, over the arms being used by Ukraine in its fight to maintain its independence. The $10 million lawsuit seeking to hold Smith & Wesson and Sturm Company, among others, responsible for the flood of weapons across the border. Mexico claims 500,000 guns crossed the border, and 68% are from the manufacturers it sued. The judge asked why, if Mexico could sue the gun makers, other countries could not too. Italy over mafia killings, Israel over attacks by Hamas, Russia over deaths of its soldiers in Ukraine. By the way, Ukraine was a storage area for surplus Soviet arms, you know, those AK-47s, at the end of the USSR, and many are now being brought out of storage. Also strangely absent from the lawsuit are the names Barack Hussein and Eric Holder. I guess the Mexicans think Operation Fast and Furious is just the 20th installment of that movie franchise.
Well, I want to... that if there are guns traveling into Mexico, that was a good share of them was through Biden's, or through Holder and Obama and Biden's ATF. They intentionally walked guns across the border, trying to find out what happened to them. Well, guess what? They got at least one Border Patrol agent and a lot of Mexicans killed by getting putting guns into known drug dealers' hands. Eric Holder, you personally are responsible for that. And I like the way this judge is thinking. If you're going to do that, then Katie, bar the door. There is no reason for the Mexican government to be suing U.S. gun manufacturers. And my brain is not working that great. There is one manufacturer, I want to say it's SIG, that was specifically not sued because, guess what? The Mexican military just made a huge order for SIG rifles.
Okay.
Well, one point of clarification too. In the story we read, it said $10 million, but this is actually a $10 billion lawsuit. So we're talking about putting these companies out of business.
Yeah.
Which is why American anti-gun politicians want this suit to go through. I have a different question to ask, though. Can we sue the Mexican military because they lost a third of their small arms? Gulp. And those are not civilian weapons. That's full of military grade.
Mm-hmm.
They lost a third of them. Sweet. You try and sue our gun companies. Let me, because they manufactured them, I'll sue you because you handed them to the narco cartels. And also, I want to ask the flip side of this question. If we can sue the manufacturers for what criminals do with the guns, are honest gun owners then indebted to gun manufacturers? They deserve a legally mandated commission for the millions of lives that we save with guns every year. How come the criminals' liability exceeds the virtue that the guns create? Or is this just a really bad idea no matter which way you turn it?
I don't like the liability in the court. I think, Rob, you just hit it. It's a really bad idea no matter which way you spin it.
Agreed. And anytime we talk about criminal activity, we're talking about the cartels. We're not talking about the government or upstanding citizens. We're talking about the cartel. So our government shouldn't be sued for the work of these the organized crime families.
Right.
Yeah, we're not talking about the Sisters of Mercy Church and their daycare center here.
No.
All right. That's I guess what we had for new. Well, let's talk a little bit because I was out for the first story. I want to talk a little bit about the shooting in New York City on the subway system. And there's a big push for more firearms regulations because of that. the gun that was used in this shooting was purchased 11 years before the shooting. It was purchased legally through an FFL, and then the person who purchased it broke New York City law by bringing it into New York City and not registering it. No more gun laws are going to help this. You know what would help this? If there's a picture of a man holding pressure on a wound and setting a makeshift tourniquet that is floating around social media. I'm betting that is the kind of person, if you would have let them be armed, there would have been some shots fired, but there would have been a lot less because there would have been return fire. Just that's kind of where I wanted to go with that.
Agreed. The duration of the mass shooting always is limited by the appearance of the second gun. And in this case, the guy had 30 hours to decide what he wanted to do and go anywhere he wanted to go before he decided to end it.
Yeah. And the police work brought them in. Really? It was a 911 call saying, I'm at the McDonald's.
Well, and the guy was a known bad actor because he was a black separatist in this mayoral administration. He was removed from the police watch list. So we got the murder. He was down there screaming that Jews caused genocide. This is who New Yorkers elected. They elected an organization that would turn a blind eye to crazy people because they were spewing the politically approved rhetoric.
The politically approved racism.
Thank you. We want to go to DGU.
Yeah, let's do that. We're going to make up some time. Let's go ahead and we're going to step off for our last break. Well, no, not our next to last break. And we're going to talk about DGUs, and we'll be right back on the other side right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
Hey, and welcome back to the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Susan, this first one out of Tennessee, this one's a shocker.
It is. A 92-year-old man was in an argument with his female caregiver. The man picked up a long knife and threatened his caregiver. In the room with the two was the elderly man's son, who was visiting from Texas. The son pleaded with his father to put down the knife and quit threatening her. The old man had gone through a slew of caregivers, and this was his last chance before they put him in a nursing home. He also warned his father that he had a gun. As his father moved toward the female, his son shot twice. He hit his father in the leg and lower stomach. 911 was immediately called. The caretaker had her phone and was taking video when the shooting occurred. It showed the elderly man with the knife in his hand, still arguing from his recliner where he fell after being shot. He was transported to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. The video showed the weapon in his hand and his demeanor, according to the district attorney's office. 10 years ago, the elderly man had been charged with killing a man who had done extensive spraying of his farm, but the two got in a dispute over payment. It was deemed that the 82-year-old man at the time was incompetent to stand trial, and all the firearms were removed from the home at the time. An autopsy has been ordered, and a final determination will be made following the conclusion of the autopsy and the investigation.
That has to be the most difficult shot in the world. Could you shoot somebody who is threatening an innocent if that somebody is somebody you loved and respected? Maybe they've gone through some mental changes and they're not who they were when you were growing up. But boy, that's a tough one. Rob, you're in show notes. What do you think, man?
Man, if you think that talking to your aged and infirm parents about their guns is hard, this story shows us how hard it is if we don't talk about it. Here was a man who was losing his physical capabilities and his mental capabilities, and we didn't have the heart-to-heart saying, Dad, it's up to me now to protect you. We're going to put you in a place where you can be protected both from other people and from yourself. We're going to take all the guns away. Because if we don't, we're going to end up in a situation like this one where Dad, in his right mind or not, is going to become violent. And now to save innocent people, you're going to kill a loved one. This is a heads up. Let's listen. Robyn, what do you have to say?
Yeah, my heart breaks for this son who had to make this decision. I wonder if there could have been some de-escalation before it got to this point. Maybe not had the father near a knife before it got to this point. I don't know how mobile he was, being so old. Maybe, maybe he could have been down in a recliner and not able to jump up and cause violence. I don't know, but it just seems like maybe there were some precautions that could have been taken. I mean, maybe the man had a history of this also. If he had a violent encounter before and was not competent to stand trial, that maybe he wasn't the, father knows best father of the year. But either way, the son then should have known his disposition and probably could have done some de-escalation or taken some steps sooner to prevent it.
Wow. But Robyn, how do you, okay, these situations are hard. You're going to have to move Dad to a facility where he can't be near metal cutlery because he's going to attack his caregivers. Wow. And here's the extra added nightmare. When you think, we'll just get the caregiver out of the room, we'll close the door, all stand there, we'll call the cops, 911 will come, and the police will fix it. And we've had police walk in the room and shoot Dad.
Yep.
That's happened. It's a mess no matter how you slice
it. Unfortunately, I don't think there was going to be a great way this turned out. But I wish it would have turned out in a way where the old man could have still been with us. But I do want to bring this up here quick. John said the caregiver should have left the house when it started. I guess fair point. Depending on, I don't know. I suppose there could have been reasons. I've never been an in-home caregiver. There may have been reasons where he or she couldn't have.
Which John is that?
John. Let me get this back up. I always have problems pronouncing John's last name.
Okay. I would think that under a number of circumstances, caregivers feel a duty of care. John, flip this around. Think about it. You're taking care of someone who has a propensity to hurt themselves. They cannot care for themselves. They may also have mental disabilities that leave them confused, and in that situation, in that condition, they can become dangerous to themselves and others. And you're going to say, before a family member can arrive and take care of the patient, you're just going to walk away. I bet there's some, I would certainly feel conflicting emotions. There's probably some conflicting laws there as well.
And I wonder what this caregiver has in terms of her own personal protection, if he or she is allowed to,
wow,
I'm sure not carry on the job, but maybe she would have some defensive tools. It just would make me wonder, if I had a job like that, is that something I would need on the daily to protect myself?
I haven't taught a pepper spray class. For people who are infirmed, is pepper spray a non-lethal weapon, or does the respiratory distress kick dad over the edge? Wow.
Not only that, in this situation, unless that's a very large room, you pepper spray in a room, everybody's getting a taste of that stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you would have to know the outcome of that in order to make the decision on what level of force it is.
Right.
Right, Susan, let's go ahead. Let's go to New Orleans.
Nah, don't go to
We've talked about
right.
the epidemic. I like New Orleans. Well, of course, the last time I was in New Orleans was right after Katrina, so
it's been a while.
We've talked about it's been a while, several years. We've talked about the epidemic of carjackings in Philadelphia and Chicago. The epidemic is nationwide. Just before 7 p.m., a 48-year-old man got out of his vehicle on Louisa Street in the Bywater area of New Orleans, just to the east of the French Quarter. All parking in that area is on street. As the man was walking to his home, to put their car in reverse and back down Louisa, one got out of the passenger seat, pointed a gun at the man, and demanded the car keys. As this man has obviously listened to Rob Morris's self-defense gun stories, he flung his keys and then took cover under a nearby car and pulled out his pistol. He spotted one of the teens by his vehicle, pointing a gun at him. He fired one shot and then ran for his house. He heard someone scream something about a crock of cheese or something, and the two drove off. The armed robber stopped and picked up a third person and then went on to the hospital. There the police seized two guns, one of them stolen, from the accomplice who told officers that the guns belonged to him and the wounded suspect. At the scene, police found evidence of a single gunshot.
I'm going to jump in on this one first again. I'm going to say one shot, one hit, and pants on, gun on. The guy was carrying on him when he was on his way back home. Good on you. And also, one other thing I want to add to that is good situational awareness. Hey, it's not really common for a car to be backing back down the street at me. Something could be going on. Create a little bit of distance here. Oh, they want my keys. Here's the keys. Yeah. I'm having a hard time finding fault here.
I can't. What I want to call our attention to is that there was a third guy down the street. Yikes. And as Robyn has mentioned a number of times, rats travel in packs. So the guy in the car, the guy who gets out of the car on the passenger seat, and the guy they dropped off down the street, if you try and run, boy, this requires a lot of situational awareness. Good for our defender.
And
Robyn?
a lot of speed also. Obviously, he didn't freeze and take time processing the situation. He threw his keys and got off the X and got under a car. That takes a lot of forethought on those things, that you're not just sitting there going, oh my gosh, what do I do? What's happening? Is this really happening? A lot of times people can delay by getting caught in their own OODA loop. So the fact that he was able to just instantly react, get behind cover, get off the X, defend himself, and then get home, that's really quick thinking for him.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this. I want to end it. We're actually now We were behind. Now we're actually a little ahead of schedule. I want to go ahead and I'm going to take our final break. Go ahead, Rob.
Paul, I thought you were going to say this. That's why I didn't. I think this guy deserves an award to get 3 criminals with 1 shot.
Yeah. He didn't arrest them, but he did get them all caught. Yes.
Yes.
I do want to take our final break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about what we're doing in media, and then we'll shut the show down. So hang on, everybody. This is our last break. We're going to hear from JPFO. We'll be right back right after this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong-house raids.
Police! Search warrant!
No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
Everybody, welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Before I throw to Rob, I got something I want to trot out real quickly here today. I was looking at stats today, and while we record it live and broadcast it live as we're recording, the Polite Society podcast has always been a podcast, first and foremost. About middle January of this year, I started doing the other show that I do, The Bullet. I started putting that out as a podcast. And it started out in a little bitty teeny tiny, just like the Politics and Guns podcast, what became a Polite Society podcast, did. The stats as of today, in just 4 short months, the stats for The Bullet are bigger than the Polite Society podcast. So if you're a podcast listener to Polite Society podcast, I would encourage you, jump on the wagon train, go over and listen to The Bullet as well. And if you're listening to The Bullet, come on over here too. I am amazed at the explosive growth we've seen with The Bullet. It's done in 4 months what it took me 10 years to do here on Polite Society podcast. Rob, what's been going on over at Slowfax, man?
Trust us, they said. New York City politicians shouted it from the podium and from the headlines. The politicians said they'd take care of us if we only voted them into office and if we asked for just a little more gun control. Every gun control law is a promise, and in this case, another broken promise that cost lives of innocent New Yorkers, not just once, but day after day and year after year. That article is called Politicians Lied, Gun Control Failed, and Innocent People Died on the New York subway. That's our first. It was also the news story we talked about first. It's almost as if we planned it that way. Another article is called Are Gun Grabbers or Gun Owners Empathetic and Distrustful? The advocates for gun prohibition identify with the victims of crime, and they want to take away the criminals' tools. The self-defense advocates identify with the victim, and they want to empower the victim. In theory, both advocates are nearly on the same side. So why does the debate end there with so little progress? Well, if you have violent impulses or barely controlled impulses, then you assume that everybody else has those same feelings. You assume that other people should be disarmed since you don't trust yourself to carry and use lethal means of self-defense. I forgot what that article's called. Oh, I know what it's called. There it is. Are gun grabbers or gun owners empathic and distrustful? That's at slowfax.wordpress.com. From there, the articles are picked up at Clash Daily and at AmmoLand. Robyn, what have you been writing? Paul, what have you been writing?
Robyn, you first.
Well, I don't have any blogs coming up because I've got specifically conference brain. I've been writing a lot of course descriptions. That's what I've been writing. So I'm really excited for our training next week, and I will join you guys in a couple of weeks after I get back and come up for air after our national conference.
All right. On my end, I've been doing a whole lot of the bullet, and that, as I said earlier, I'm pleased as punch that the bullet is growing as fast as it is, and it is now caught Polite Society Podcast. I expect in the next couple of weeks it'll grow beyond Polite Society Podcast because numbers are trends, and trends are hard to stop. So, and I don't want to stop it. If one of them's growing, I want it to continue to grow. So, on my end, media-wise, I'm gonna my continued push is gonna be to do more of the bullet, more of Polite Society Podcast. I do not yet have a guest book for next week, but that'll happen in the next few days. So that's I think gonna do it for us for right now. I do want to mention that John could not join us tonight, and I do recommend you go over to check out his blog. If you're wondering what's going on with the NRA, his is the blog I would check out first. His is at onlygunsandmoney.com. That's if I want to know what's going on with the NRA, I either pick up the phone or honestly what I do is I read his blog first. And if I need to go more in depth, I'll pick up the phone. So that's going to do it for another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Holly Sullivan for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robyn, Charlie, and Rob, until next time,
stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, we are going to go ahead and shut the broadcast down. Not much of a post show. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, everybody, for commenting. And we will see you next Monday night. See ya, everybody.